Welcome to this week's Ancient History News. My lead story isn't news really. It's about a cuneiform tablet that was found a very long time ago. However, a recent YouTube presentation by the British Museum on the tablet, which is the oldest known map of the world, attracted my attention. So I decided to talk about this intriguing artifact. I also discussed the discovery of a final Neolithic agricultural complex in Morocco that's the earliest and largest in Africa outside of the Nile Valley, and the identification of 303 more Nazca geoglyphs in southern Peru. Stick with me until the last story because the archaeologist that's leading the research using drones and artificial intelligence has also developed his own hypothesis based on this new data on what the purpose of the geoglyphs may have been. Super interesting, let's get into it. Babylonian tablet depicting a map of the world discussed on Curator's Corner. A Babylonian tablet dating to around 600 BCE is the oldest known map of the world. It was excavated in 1882 from the Babylonian city of Sippar by the archaeologist Hormuzd Rassam, but stayed alongside his other excavation findings for more than 100 years before being rediscovered in Iraq 29 years ago. Renowned philologist and Assyriologist Dr. Irving Finkel recently presented the British Museum's research on the tablet via their Curator's Corner segment on YouTube. I've put a link in the description below. There's also some really good information on the British Museum website, which is what I used to give this summary of the tablet. The city of Sippar was occupied as far back as the early Bronze Age. However, the tablet dates to the neo-babylonian period, which began around the first millennium BCE. The drawing is occupied by annotations and text in cuneiform script written in the Akkadian language. A note at the end of the tablet mentions that it is a copy, but based on the places that it mentions, experts date the original to no earlier than the 9th century BCE, so around 300 years before the copy was made. The tablet is pretty small, measuring 12.3 by 8.2 centimeters, but still contains a lot of details of the geographic world as it was known to and experienced by the neo-Babylonians at the time. The map features the world as a disc surrounded by water called the Bitter River. In the center of the disc, the river Euphrates runs south and ends in a horizontal band split into two. The right side of this band is labelled as marsh, and the left side is labelled as outflow. Places are inscribed as small circles and include Assyria, Der, Bityakin, Haban, and Urartu. The Bitter River that encircles the world is surrounded by 8 outlying regions labelled as Nagu and depicted as triangles. There's also a note next to the northeastern region, which means where Shamash is not seen. Shamash refers to the sun. The Babylonians believed that the sun rose in the east and set in the west without passing through the south. In between the regions, a unit of measurement is given beru, and it either says that there are 6 or 7 beru between each region. On the reverse of the tablet, more detail is given on these 8 regions, but the paragraphs are mostly unreadable. What can be deciphered once again mentions the distance of measurement between the regions, but in all the readable examples says 7. There are no examples of 6 beru as on the front, which is a bit confusing. A final piece of text reads, "In all 8 regions of the 4 shores of the earth, their interior no one knows." The word for 4 shores is Kibrati. In Mesopotamia, the 4 shores corresponded with the 4 compass directions and was meant to be the whole known world. In the Sumerian flood story, the Epic of Gilgamesh, after the waters subside, Utnapishtim is said to look out over the 4 shores at the boundary of the sea and to see 12 regions emerging. So the idea of regions beyond the sea probably had mythological significance, and since they were depicted as triangles on the tablet, were probably thought of as mountains. Other parts of the text on the reverse of the tablet that can be read appear to talk about the inhabitants of the 8 regions, and these are a combination of humans, deities, animals, and monsters. 3 humans that it refers to are Utnapishtim, who features as the Babylonian Noah in the Epic of Gilgamesh, Sargon, who was king of Akkad between 2334 and 2279 BCE, and Ner-Dagan, who was king of Purush-Handa in Anatolia. It seems that the front of the tablet was meant to be a geographic representation, whereas the reverse was meant to be more about mythology. If that sounds interesting, take a look at Dr. Finkel's presentation, which goes into a lot more detail and which I really enjoyed. Archaeologists discover evidence for the oldest farming society in Morocco. A new study published in the journal Antiquity discusses archaeological fieldwork at a previously unknown Neolithic site in Morocco. The Maghreb, which is the region that covers northwest Africa, was occupied during the Paleolithic and played an important role in cultural connections during the Phoenician and Islamic periods. However, up until now, little was known about the 3 millennia between 4000 and 1000 BCE. Archaeologists working at the site called Oued Beht have found evidence for a previously unknown farming society that occupied the area between 3400 and 2900 BCE. This is actually the oldest and largest agricultural complex to have been found in Africa outside of the Nile Valley. Oued Beht is located around 200 meters above sea level and overlooks a perennial river. The zone is classed as bioclimatically Mediterranean and semi-arid. A drainage system to the north called Garb may have provided sea access via a bay or estuary during the Neolithic. The site was first discovered in the 1930s, with several excavations taking place much later in 2013, 2016 and 2017. More than 1,000 axes and adzes were found alongside some stone structures. However, a lot of the research has still not been published. In 2021, new fieldwork began as part of the British-Italian-Moroccan Oued Beht archaeological project. The team carrying out this fieldwork were able to generate 13 radiocarbon dates, mostly falling between 3400 and 2900 BCE, a time period they have termed the final Neolithic in the region. 19,626 finds were excavated from the site and included pottery sherds, chipped stone pieces, axes and adzes, and macrolithics. Such a concentration of pottery and lithics has not been found on the African continent outside of the Nile Valley before, and within the Mediterranean context, the number of finds is also significant. Many pits were found, but their function hasn't been determined. It's most likely that they were used for the storage of crops initially before being reused later on for waste disposal. The excavation of grinding tools, domesticated crops, and bones from domesticated animals are evidence that this was an agricultural site. A variety of vessels are represented by the ceramic sherds and show a high level of sophistication compared to early pottery recovered from other Maghrebian sites. Macrolithics were largely found on the surface, with some excavated from pits. These were mostly fragments of tools that would have been used for crop processing, consumption, and storage. However, only a limited number of harvesting tools were found, which may indicate a bare-handed technique was used instead. It's not clear what the linear stone structures were used for, but overall it's clear that across an area of between 9 and 10 hectares, a final Neolithic society with an agricultural economy processed and stored crops, kept animals, and prepared food. Very little evidence of hunting and gathering was found. Considering the size of the area and the large number of pits, it appears to have been a village with a pretty large population. The authors of the paper are hesitant to compare the site with others or to try to understand the socio-economic context from which the village emerged or what happened afterwards, since there is limited data. However, further survey should help to fill the chronological gaps in the region. Hundreds more glyphs have been discovered in Peru. The Nazca lines are geoglyphs etched into the soil in the Nazca Desert in southern Peru. Some of these are simply lines running across the desert, others are geometric, anthropomorphic, and zoomorphic depictions, and some of these are enormous. They are easier to view aerially and were probably meant to be observed from neighbouring hills when they were created between 2500 and 1500 years ago. It's not clear what their function was, but they are thought to have played a ceremonial role. The dry, windless environment of the desert has meant that many are in an excellent state of preservation. Over the years, more than 400 glyphs have been discovered on the Nazca Pampa plateau, with new technology helping more and more to be identified. Now a team led by Masato Sakai, an archaeologist and anthropologist at Yamagata University in Japan, has used drones and artificial intelligence to identify another 303 glyphs, a project that took only 6 months. The research has been published in the journal The Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. This new data has also helped Sakai to hypothesize a purpose behind the glyphs. He has suggested that the glyphs were created as part of a sacred pilgrimage to Kahuachi, which was the ceremonial center of the Nazca culture. Some glyphs can be viewed from Kahuachi due to its many mounds creating elevated viewing platforms. There are 2 categories of glyph: relief type, mostly depicting humans and domesticated animals, and line type, mostly depicting wild animals. The relief types are smaller and harder to see. According to Sakai, these different types of glyphs may have had different functions. He suggests that the relief glyphs were meant to be seen from trails that pilgrims walked along, whereas since the line glyphs were connected to linear geoglyphs, which in turn reached ceremonial centers, then these may have been part of the network people actually moved along. Sakai also thinks that the glyphs may have been meant to communicate information in a similar way to the arrangements of pictures in the Andean civilization. Further research will be done to decipher this hypothesized information. That's it. Thank you for watching. If you're still here, you must like what I do. So hit that little thumbs up down there. Thank you to my patrons and channel members for all of your support, and I'll see you next time.